Can everybody see my slides somehow? Okay. All right. Well, some insects for bolos, or I should say arthropod bolos, for October. So be on the lookout for things winding down as the weather becomes cooler. We felt a little bit of the coolness across the state recently. Hopefully, it's going to trend to nice fall weather. Get away from the summer heat. You're still going to be seeing. In fact, yesterday I was just tweeted one of these large black and yellow garden spiders. Still going to be seeing some of the larger spiders, mantises, and wheel bugs that have basically finished their growing. They're now mating and laying eggs to overwinter, and then they will die. So, and once it starts to get cold, we start to get frost, these things are going to die off. But you will see them still, as October's here in North Carolina are typically fairly mild and nice. There are also going to be a lot of flowering plants still coming out in the fall. So goldenrods and Queen Anne's lace, things like that, you're going to be seeing. And these attract a lot of different neat insects from beetles and wasps, flies, and predatory bugs. Lots of neat things. So if you want to go observe insects as they start to as the year starts to wind down, go visit those flowers. There's lots of different specialists that will be out looking for these nectar and pollen and whatnot. Hopefully not, but possibly more fall armyworms. So this year has been terrible for fall armyworms. Well, great for them, but bad for us or homeowners with lawns. And so these moths, in fact, I saw one flying around my buddleia last night. If you go out in the evening and at night and look around your flowers, especially around my lantana and buddleia, you see these moths, the night flying moths, replacing the butterflies at night and feeding on the flowers. And there was a fall armyworm there. Now, luckily, my lawn is no longer a lawn and it's all weeds. So they don't really like all those weeds. So I'm pretty safe. But if you have a nice lawn, check for these moths flying around or these caterpillars. They have this characteristic Y-shaped yellow marking on their head and very large four square of dots on the back on the rump, basically. But the moths will lay eggs on foliage and on buildings and other structures over lawns, and the larvae then drop down, feed. They're very small at first, you won't notice them, and then as they get bigger, they can completely destroy a lawn almost overnight. So if you have a lawn that's well managed, you really love it, and you don't want it to get eaten, scout around the property, around the areas, look for any of these moths, look for any of the egg masses. The egg masses are multiple small, round, yellowish eggs that are usually coated in a fluffy scales from the adults. And so you can just scrape those eggs off or remove the leaf and destroy the leaf they're on. And that should help them reduce the populations that are out there. Hopefully there aren't too many more of these, but if it stays a little warm, they'll still be reproducing here. And as it gets colder, we have to, of course, warn about home invading critters. Does anybody know what this little fellow or gal is hiding in my blinds? This was not this year. This was previous years. What's that?
Stink bug.
It is a stink bug. So brown marmorated stink bugs. They're going to start coming in as it gets cooler. They will be a severe nuisance, of course. They seem to be more prevalent in the mountains, but they are present across the state. Here's one crawling on my very dusty toaster oven in the kitchen. And I had several hiding in these little blinds in my basement one fall. So as the weather starts to cool down, the days get shorter, these insects are going to start to kind of creep inside. So you get the brown marmorated stink bugs, you got ladybugs, which can come in massive amounts. And these are actually even worse sometimes than the stink bugs because they can actually bite people. I have been bitten by a harmonia before and it is not pleasant. And then things like cluster flies. These are adults that overwinter of a type of fly that parasitizes earthworms. I have not seen a mass amount of these, but they are mentioned in the literature as one of the groups that will overwinter in homes. And many of the social wasps too, the queens. Once the colony dies off at the end of the year, right now, once it starts to cool off, the colony dies. the males and the females, the new queens have been out and mated, the males will die, and these mated queens will then hibernate over the winter in order to start a new colony next year. And they may hibernate in leaf litter or under bark or somewhere out in nature, but also they may enter homes, and oftentimes they'll come inside the homes, go in the attics. And again, we will also talk about this in the spring, and I'll mention this again next session too, but in the spring is when we start to see them come out. So you'll start to see sometimes wasps and stink bugs and things like that during this time of year, and then when they're coming in, and then the spring when they're leaving. So Jim, anything else I should add about this time of year, October? It's one of those times of year where it's, things are winding down. We're seeing a little less activity. Nothing's really kind of, no new plants really growing, and but anything you can think of? No? I'd love to hear it if you do, if you think of anything. But at some point I'm gonna pick your brain. I'm gonna go out to lunch or something, pick your brain and get some more of these bolos done. So I think that'll be fun. All right. Well, I'm gonna stop sharing now and let Mike talk about some diseases.
All right, thank you, Matt. Diseases and other things. So welcome, everyone. It's interesting, going back to Dr. Baker's comment about trees. I call that and I'm not saying I share the sentiment, but I call it the hot chocolate effect, because a hot chocolate spends half its time too hot to drink and half its time too cold to drink. And there's about a 30-second period where it's just right. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So this was, I want to actually start with what could be a bolo, something you're going to want to be on the lookout for, and you may get questions about, but this is actually still in September, some photographs that came in from Mecklenburg County, and there were several plants in a landscape that were involved. In this particular case, it was an agastache, and there were these structures, dark, flattish, round in shape, but with these trailing white streamer somethings coming out of them. And so I may be getting ahead. We could have used this for a great critter or not someday. Maybe we will, and see if people remember it. Here's another photograph of another plant in that landscape. You can see them down in the on this leaf here. But also, if you look in the upper left-hand portion of the photograph, you'll see the clue. If you needed one, it's pretty fuzzy. It's like a picture of Bigfoot or something. But I've got a better picture from our archives here that Dr. Legrand took. So this is one of the bird's nest fungi. In this particular case, it's Cyathus olla, or olla, we would say in Spanish. Not saying for sure it was this species, but it was something like this. And those little spore packets called peridioles will splash out of the little cups or nests and will stick on foliage there with that trailing extension that they have. And then, so that was what we were looking at. Not going to harm the plants at all. It's strictly saprobic on the mulch, so breaking down the wood in the mulch, and it's not going to harm anything, but falls in the category of what we call nuisance fungi, which are one of the things that you may want to be on the lookout for in the month of October. As far as our shade trees and shrubs, of course, powdery mildew may be coming on strong. We've seen several cases of it or suspected on some of the magnolias, not on southern magnolia, but on, let's say, saucer magnolia is very susceptible to it. So you may be seeing that hit hard in landscapes in these days. We always say to be on the lookout for Phytophthora and Armillaria root rots, not necessarily because the fungi are most active in any particular month, but you can have the damage done to the roots, and then during periods of stress, the tree or shrub will start declining. I'm a little surprised we didn't see more of this year after such a wet winter that we had last winter, and then it dried off in the spring, and then we have had some dry periods lately. But that's the kind of scenario that you want to look for. Always think about the roots. And the asterisk there on the armillaria is because with that particular fungus, you may at this time of year start seeing the fruiting bodies. We've talked about this before. They're clusters of honey-colored mushrooms that appear at or near the base of the affected tree or shrub. When we usually have to look out for, in the upper photograph there, the white mat or cream-colored mat of fungal tissue, mycelium, between the bark and the wood at the base of the tree or in the larger roots. So that's still a good way to look for it, but you may get the extra clue. It's not always going to be there with the presence of those mushrooms coming up. It's a good time to refamiliarize yourself with the symptoms of both rose rosette and boxwood blight, which are two very serious pests of a couple of our most popular landscape plants, because those you want to be on the lookout for in this month as well. Those areas that have spruces, so mostly up in the mountains, be aware of the possibility of rhizosphere and needle cast, causing needles to drop off, and especially down toward the lower portion of the tree, you may get some excess needle cast beyond what's just normal shedding, and that can be caused by that particular fungus. We also sometimes see what's called stigmina, another fungus, stigmina needle blight on spruce. We got an email just yesterday, and it's fairly common now this time of year, inquiring about these large conchs at the base of trees. There are some that look like a loaf of bread. There's a really big one there. That's me holding it from October a few years ago on campus here. Or in a young stage, it looks like kind of the dough just rising. Very common on oaks in this part of the state, and that is Pseudoinonotus dryadius, which causes a root and butt rot. And you can actually get the trees, the structural integrity of those roots to the point, lost to the point where you can get wind throw in a storm, let's say, but even before you see significant decline in the crown. So be on the lookout for those. Endomosporium leaf spot on Indian hawthorn, and of course, if there are any red tip photinias left in the landscapes, you'll see it there. Begin into our more active season for that. It likes cooler weather, but it does need the moisture. Well, I should say it likes moderate weather, not too hot, not too cold. So that puts it active in quite a few months of the year here in North Carolina. And again, I mentioned boxwood blight. So the three things to look for there: leaf drop, dark leaf spots, and the dark streaks on the green twigs. So see 2 out of 3 of those, and pretty much that tells you you've got boxwood blight. Not too much left in the vegetable garden anymore this time of year. Things will be kind of moving out. If you still have basil downy mildew may be a problem. Any beans that are left, Cercospora leaf spot could be what is ailing them. And of course, powdery mildew on cucurbits, especially the squash and the pumpkin. And you may see microdochium blight on pumpkin, including on the fruit. We'll start getting the cole crops into the garden this time of year, so always be very careful with those transplants that you're not bringing black rot in, which is a bacterial disease. And typically, as you see in the lower photograph here, not always manifesting this way, but typically with that Y-shaped marginal spot, you may see the veins a little bit darker there, and that can be a real problem on our brassicas. And we don't really see it much, but need to talk about something. So I'll mention white leaf spot on turnip is another thing that you could see this time of year. And with the fruits and nuts, well, there's not too much left, but pecan scab will be something that you might encounter in both on leaves and the shucks. And speaking of the fruits and nuts, I wanted to mention this sample that came in this month. It was fig tree, or there have been multiple trees that were affected, a multi-stem stump anywhere, multi-stemmed plant. And there was decline going on, yellowing, wilting. And they also noticed this fungus at the base, which if you dug in, you'd notice that there was decay right up to the soil line. But the conclusion was that that fungus was actually secondary, that the real problem when you got down and dug into it was root knot nematode. So I saw this, under the microscope in the lab, but also sent soil to the Department of Ag, NCDA, and CS nematode assay laboratory that confirmed high populations of root knot nematode in the soil there. So don't count them out as a problem on figs, and of course on things that are in the vegetable garden and flower beds as well. Moving then on to the flowers, and mentioning the root knot nematode, but also as foliar diseases just accumulate over the season, as nutrition starts to get depleted in the soil if you're not fertilizing, you may see some just general decline. And of course, a reminder, you don't want to be fertilizing your trees and shrubs because you want them to go dormant into the spring, and into the fall, and not get winter injury. If you try and push growth with heavy pruning or with fertilization in the fall, then you may be setting yourself up for some cold injury during the first cold spells of the fall or the last ones of the spring. So of course, that when it kind of wakes up, and the base of the tree, especially or shrub, is going to be what's first active. Powdery mildew, saw a lot on zinnias this year, and you'll still be seeing that. May see it on sedum, several other kinds of flowers. Liriope, we always see the anthracnose on the leaf tips. You may see Fusarium crown rot taking the entire plant out. And these zinnias left not only alternaria leaf spot, but also getting on the petals and causing the flowers to be unsightly. And as we put our pansies and violas into the landscape for winter color, you have to be careful that you're not bringing something in with Phytophthora root or crown rot. That's fairly obvious, though. It would cause a collapse of the whole plant. You should notice that. But black root rot is more subtle, so do look at the roots there. You may see some yellowing on the foliage. Check the roots out, make sure you're not planting something that will establish itself into your home landscape. And Pythium root rot, of course, can occur on so many different of our herbaceous flowers. In turf, again, information from our turf folks, since I'm not the expert in that, but any month of the year on any turf, you can see fairy ring, large patch on warm season turf as it becomes stressed by the cooler weather, leaf spot on bluegrass and Bermuda grass caused by the fungus bipolaris, and rust on certain turf species. So typically the small orangish pustules there of the dry spores that are produced if you look up close. And I will see, I have not been seeing my chat, so let me see if there are any questions. A hickory seedling whose top third has turned a maroon color and curled leaves. What might that be? I am at a loss on that one. I'll go ahead and turn on the video here. You can see the cluttered office again. Anytime where you see a sharp transition between a part of the plant or a tree or shrub anyway that's alive and a part that's dead, you want to look at the point between those two to see if there wasn't any kind of a girdling going on, a canker or something that is affecting it from that point upward. I don't really know anything specific to hickory that would cause those symptoms. Anything in the insect side, Matt or Jim, that might do that?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's a small tree, inspect around, where you start to see the damage, like Mike said. So cankers are going to be internal. You may see some boring or girdling physical damage. If it sounds like it's probably not obvious if whatever you've seen. So I would say, and Mike might agree or might not, this is one of those situations where at this time of the year, we would probably say just wait, leave it and see until next spring and see how it leaves out. If it leaves out nicely, there may not be an issue. But if it doesn't, then there's definitely something going on. And you'll see more necrosis in the top if it's a continuing issue. So, Mike, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's probably between those two, looking at the transition zone and taking the wait and see attitude, that is where I would head for. Make sure you don't have anything obvious feeding on those leaves, but they're going to be shed in another few weeks anyway, depending on what part of the state you're in. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, if there aren't any other questions for Mike or I, then I guess Charlotte, you want to talk about some plants?
Absolutely. Thank you. So we are going to talk about our Plant These Instead feature. So we're looking at Miscanthus sinensis this month, Chinese silvergrass or maiden grass. So this is a really popular ornamental grass, and there are lots and lots of cultivars available. It is actually native to Eastern Asia, and it is blooming right now. And some of the cultivars have been blooming for, maybe a month or more. And some of those earlier blooming ones have probably already set seed, and that's where it becomes an issue as an invasive species because the seed are wind dispersed, so they get carried well beyond the landscape. I was in western North Carolina last week, and there are just huge swaths, of roadsides and empty fields that are nothing but miscanthus. I did see one record that Asheville was the first place miscanthus was cultivated in the United States. I couldn't find something that verified that, so I'm not going to say that's absolutely true, but I did read that in one report, which may be why it is so widespread in the Asheville area especially. Also, Washington, D.C. was an early place it was reported to be cultivated, and it has well established in that area. So throughout the Southeast, actually, so it is considered an invasive species. Most common along roadsides and disturbed areas because as a grass, it does tend to colonize disturbed areas. But the problem with that is it prevents any other vegetation, native vegetation, from coming back in and reestablishing. Like most grasses, it's not terribly shade tolerant, so it's not something you tend to find deep in the woods or in really established habitats. But even here in the Piedmont, I see it just, on the side of the road, at the edge of the woods. Not huge colonies yet, but it seems to be popping up more and more. So I don't think it's going to remain isolated to just being an issue in the western part of the state. In addition, it's also highly flammable. So where you do get these large swaths of it and you were to get wildfires or somebody were to toss out something that could spark a wildfire, this could really get a wildfire going quickly. So that's also a concern. So what can we plant instead? Well, with miscanthus, it is really popular because it is tough and it's quite attractive. So there's been some work to develop cultivars that are bred to be non-fertile. I find it very interesting when you read about these varieties. Nobody feels really comfortable coming out and saying they are absolutely sterile. They usually use the terminology bred to be non-fertile or reported to be sterile, so things like that. So you can see one of them in the picture here. It is a variety named Bandwidth, and there are actually several of these miscanthus cultivars that have this kind of crosshatch variegation. Those varieties in general tend to set less seed, but that doesn't mean they're absolutely sterile. So this Bandwidth variety was bred by NC State and released by NC State. There's another one called My Fair Maiden, released by NC State, that is bred to be non-fertile, as well as one from the University of Georgia named Scout. So if you really need to use a miscanthus, I would definitely look for one of those cultivars. Also, in general, the later blooming varieties set less seed. They will still set seed, and as our seasons kind of change and get longer, they may set lots of seed. But in general, miscanthus have become more of an issue as horticulturists have bred and developed earlier blooming varieties. So we've kind of created an issue as we've wanted and desired more early blooming varieties so that we could see them earlier in the season. So one that doesn't actually start to bloom until, say, late September, October, as the season's getting shorter, is going to be less likely. There's not enough to set those fertile seed because there's just not enough time. So even with these varieties, late bloomers or those bred to be non-fertile, there's no guarantees. So if you want something that absolutely isn't going to be an issue. As an invasive species, we can look at some of our native grasses. So switchgrass or panic grass, Panicum virgatum, is a very popular native grass. It occurs most of the central and eastern United States. There are lots of selected varieties of this ornamental grass as well. And generally you can find them that mature at anywhere from about 3 or 4 feet up to 8 or 10 feet. So if you want a really big one, you can find a really big one. If you need something a little shorter, those are available too. And it's very adaptable. Like most grasses, it's going to do best in full sun. But as far as soil types go, it's drought tolerant. It'll grow in drier sites. It'll grow in wetter sites. Not permanently flooded, but pretty much anything other than that. And it can provide some wildlife value just as cover, and then the seeds are eaten by songbirds. So be sure to leave it standing in the winter. Don't cut it back, too soon. It can be quite attractive in the winter. It dries out and gets kind of a tan color. In the fall, sometimes they can develop these nice golden colors, and those airy seed heads look quite pretty too. So maybe wait until later in the winter, January, February, till after winter storms make it look kind of bad. You'll definitely actually want to cut it back by February or March before the new growth starts emerging. But you can see on the slide some varieties like Prairie Fire. There's actually several that have this burgundy kind of foliage. It gets more burgundy throughout the season, and those tend to be a little shorter. So Prairie Fire is about a 3 to 4 foot variety. Thundercloud is a new one. I'm trying to one I want to grow. It is a taller one, but supposed to stay upright very well. So there is an older one named Cloud 9, which is like 8 to 10 feet tall, but it's kind of floppy. So Cloud 9 is one of the parents of Thundercloud, but it is crossed with Northwind, which has a very upright habit. So I'm looking forward to trying to grow that one. And then on the end is just showing some fall color, but that was a picture that didn't have a named cultivar. So lots of options with switchgrass or panic grass. Very nice and useful and attractive grass for the landscape. And then the other one I want to mention is pink muleygrass. So this is looking very spectacular right now. It's just starting to bloom. Maybe at the coast it's already bloomed out a little more, but mine are just starting to show color. This is a shorter grass, so these really, when they're in full bloom, they can be about 3 feet tall. But when the blooms aren't present, the mound is only, say, about 2 feet tall, 2 or 3 feet. 2 feet tall, maybe up to 3 feet across. So it is a grass that looks really nice in a mass, as you can see in some of the pictures, especially when the sunlight is on it. It really has an iridescent quality. So the species itself, Muhlenbergia capillaris, is native to the southern and eastern United States, and it has the pink flower. So that's where the pink muleygrass common name comes from. And you can see in the pictures that it typically blooms like starting in late September through October. Very similar to panic grass. It's pretty adaptable, best in full sun. Doesn't seem to be really happy where there's a lot of tree root competition, even though you see it there in the picture with that crepe myrtle. That was the only woody plant kind of in that whole area. But is pretty tolerant of soil types from dry and very drought tolerant to moist soils. Does not like permanent flooding though. And in addition to the pink muleygrass, there is a cultivar named White Cloud, as you can see, which has these ivory colored flowers. And it is really attractive too. And when I first read about White Cloud, before I actually saw it, I thought, I just can't imagine why you would want a white flowered version of this pink muleygrass, because it's just so spectacular. But when I actually saw it, I thought, wow, that is really nice as well. So it's different, but it's also beautiful. And again, with the sunlight on it, just seems to glow. So pink muleygrass or panic grass are great options to plant instead of miscanthus. You can explore more grasses on the Extension Gardener Plant Toolbox. If you go to the Whole Plant Traits section under Find a Plant, you can select ornamental grasses. If you're specifically interested in native plants, there's another little box you can tick that says native plants. So when you select those two, you'll have 48 different options to look at. And you can narrow your search by a whole lot of other parameters. So I really encourage you to use the Find a Plant tool on the Extension Gardener Plant Toolbox to find plant options for your landscape. Let's see, I would say just quickly if there were any questions about the grasses. So I see there was a question, if you don't cut back, will switchgrass survive? Yes, it will, but the problem, it just looks a little unattractive. So you have the new green leaves emerging through the old dead, brown foliage. And over time, the older foliage the dead foliage just kind of break off and fall away. But it's just a matter of attractiveness, really, cutting it back. And does this pink mully spread much? So pink mullygrass can self-seed. So it does tend to, may get some seedlings popping up, especially in my yard. I have a gravel driveway and it loves to come up in that gravel, right at the edge of the gravel driveway. I've moved many plants from there. If you keep mulch down, it definitely reduces seeding, self-seeding. It's not a rhizomatous plant, the pink mullygrass. It makes a clump. So over time, the clump will get larger and you could dig it up and divide it. Actually, for these grasses, early summer is a good time to divide them because they are warm season growers, kind of like our warm season turf grasses. So dividing them in early summer is going to be more successful than, say, this time of year when they're wanting to go dormant. So pink mullygrass most likely to spread by seed. Panicum, I've noticed a few cultivars tend to seed a little more, but that is one also that makes a clump that gets a little bigger each year that you can divide after a few years. All right, great question. So we'll finish up with a few announcements. I hope everybody has on their calendar for next Wednesday. We will have one of our Inspire, Connect, Empower webinars. These are sponsored by the North Carolina Extension Master Gardener Volunteer Association, and we will be talking about remote hotlines. So this is not where you go climb a tree and respond to questions, although you possibly could. That might be what you need to do to get good internet connection, but we'll be talking about hotlines that Master Gardener volunteers or helping to manage and respond to questions somewhere other than the Extension office, particularly from home and over, some type of computer technology, usually by email. So we have Master Gardener volunteers from 3 different counties joining us, and they're going to share tips and tools for what works in their county, how they've adapted through COVID-19, and things that they found that they're going to continue using just because it's been extremely helpful and a good way to manage and respond to questions coming in from the public. Then from 2:30 to 3, we're going to open it to a Q&A, and you will also be invited, if you have tips to add, to include those. So we invite everyone to be part of sharing what works best in your county. This is posted on the EMG intranet, so you can find the Zoom link and sign up there. It will also be recorded and available as a recording. If you're interested in learning more about Plant ID this fall, there is a whole series of online Plant ID courses being offered starting in the next few weeks. They'll run October 11th through November 22nd. These are the classes that are offered in conjunction with Longwood Gardens. Laura Barth is the instructor. So there are 2 new classes. There's one just on houseplants, succulents, and cacti being offered, and another one that just focuses on vegetables, herbs, fruits, and nuts, so all the edibles. Then the annual perennial vines and ground covers and tree, shrubs, and conifer courses are being repeated. So there is a discount if you're a Master Gardener volunteer or extension professional. We'll send out in the follow-up email the link where you can learn more all about that and how to get registered. If you want a preview of what those courses are like, we invite you to watch the recording from last week's presentation by Laura Barth. She shared tips for Plant ID and techniques and terminology you should know. And I think somebody has their Okay, so I think somebody muted it for me. Thank you. So if you just want a little preview before you jump into one of the full courses, check out the recording from Laura's presentation. Identifying plants begins by learning their language, and you can find that on the Extension Master Gardener Internet, the North Carolina site, and go to the continuing education link. There was also an email sent out with that link too. And that brings us up to the end of today's session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Just a final reminder again that we will be doing our season finale on November 2nd, so that's a week later than our typical 4th Tuesday date. And we will be looking at current pest and plant disease issues with Matt and Mike. So we really look forward to seeing you all then. Hope you have a wonderful time between now and then, and that we all are able to enjoy the amazing fall weather. I will play our music once again so we can stop our recording, but wish you all the best.